through a lot of this uncertainty that you have as a manager, right? Like I think it's definitely your responsibility to demand clarity in many ways and provide clarity to people, even if it's really, really hard.
Chris, thanks so much for joining us today. Before we get started here, could you just tell us a little bit about who you are and who you work for, please?
Sure, yeah. My name is Chris. I work for Zenjob. Zenjob is a short-term marketplace. We try to connect people looking for short-term jobs to businesses and make it super easy for the rest of the people. I've been in tech for the last 15 years or so, mostly as manager positions. And in the past, I was an engineer doing a lot of different things, back-end mobile, things like that.
Great. Okay. And then in a couple of months' time, you're going to be joining us at Lead Dev Berlin. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about there?
Yeah, I'll be talking about layoffs. I guess trendy topic in the last year or so, but I I learned a lot through a lot of different experiences, I guess, through the years. So it's kind of my thoughts and my learnings through, in a way, being laid off a long time ago, being part of layoffs, and also kind of running a layoff round in the past as well. So it's three different takes on that, and some of the learnings that I can take from those experiences, trying to, help through that. I guess that's the intent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's unfortunately been a huge topic this year, right? There's been so many layoffs across the industry. And I think there's a lot of people in management positions who maybe have never gone through anything like this before. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout your entire career about how to manage, a period like this with widespread layoffs?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think it's many things, right? Through a lot of this uncertainty that you have as a manager, right? Like I think it's definitely your responsibility to demand clarity in many ways and provide clarity to people, even if it's really, really hard, right? So just making sure you have enough information through that to work with your directs to make sure things are understood, to be put yourself available for questions, right? And to try to understand what's next, so you can work with your team on the next steps through that experience is pretty important. That is coming if you are like in a manager position, right? If I think one of the things that I learned, if I was affected, right, and I suffered quite a lot from this, was like to understand the why, like why was layoff in a way, and then that took me a while to learn, right? And at some point, I think it's really important to emphasize that maybe there's not a good answer, right? Like, this is not just about yourself, and it's okay sometimes, right, to say, hey, I can't continue. Our company doesn't define me. I will carry on, and I'm sure I will find a good position next, right? And that takes a while, right, to do. But I think that's one of the biggest ones as well for me.
Yeah, and I think that's fascinating because like you have that unique experience that maybe not every manager has of having been through that process. And I think that actually that's probably quite useful, having been someone who's gone through the process of being laid off or being somewhere where there is layoffs happening. To them as a manager, you can then be like, how would I want this to be managed if it was me? That kind of golden rule element. Is that something you've learned to do now that you're in a different position?
Correct. I think those experiences really, really help me now and in the past as well, right? And only because of that really, really bad experience that I had about being laid off like 10 years ago, I was able to manage some of that a bit better, I think. And through all that, like try to extrapolate something, right? It's a super complicated topic. And I think most managers are not ever trained for any of this at all, right? It just feels like a huge bomb exploded in the company and everyone is kind of running around and stuff, right? So I think it's definitely worth trying to talk about it a bit more and sharing those learnings. That's the intent.
Yeah, and we don't have the benefit of doing this now because unfortunately this has kind of been happening for a year before you've managed to do your talk. But I think as an engineer, it's always quite nice to have like a plan or at least like a rubric for when this sort of thing happens. I find that with something as momentous as, you know, a round of layoffs, there's definitely phases that you need to manage through. There's that initial shock, and then there's what's next, and then there's kind of keeping your team as on track as possible when they're a bit distracted. Do you kind of have a framework for managing through times like these?
Yeah, I like I said, like clarity, I think is the main thing, right? So trying to reach for that clarity really soon, right? And reflecting on yourself first. If you're an engineer or a manager, right? Where does that put me? I'm still involved 100%. Do I still believe in this company, even if this happened, right? Should I start, you know? And when you're clear on yourself, you need to work with others to arrive at that, right? A lot of people will be looking at you for those answers, right? Like, tell me why it's not for me. Like, all my team got affected, or maybe 50%, right? Or, you know, like, so extended that support is super important, and clarifying the panorama for sure, right? I think like trying to get into a way that you can establish team dynamics really quickly as well. Like, you know, yes, the bomb exploded, and you know, things happen, right? But just trying to get back the team to a better state, like, you know, continue with your one-on-ones. What is the next steps? Should we, you know, start this project? Should we make sure, you know, we finish, or like, you know, just trying to bring that clarity and trying to bring back the sense of a working team is really, really important to find that, right? And if you can, after maybe, you know, a month or a couple of weeks of that, have a bit more long-term vision. Like, why are you here, and then why are you offering to your team to you know, be in this position with you and carry on? I think is also good. And then I think you can look at the company leaders for that and all that. But I think what I noticed from my experience is so much arrows were pointing in my direction that I was not even aware of, right? So much people were waiting for me to go and tell them, hey, I learned about this, and this is what's going to happen next, right? And sometimes companies are really nice and they share that in an open forum, like an all hands and stuff, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So it's up to you to do it. Another thing I think is super important is making room for the team to deliver, or, you know, part of the team or whatever, to make sure there's some sort of movement and wins along the way. So like, whatever you can do as a manager to allow those interactions, right? And to make sure there's you know, wins, let's call it like that, even through that tricky times, is going to let you move forward, right? As part of that.
I love that. That's a really kind of succinct way of kind of managing what is a very complex and normally quite a long process. So I'm excited to hear more about it in your talk. If we fast forward now to after you finish delivering your talk up on stage in Berlin, what do you hope the audience take away?
Well, hopefully a tiny bit more. I feel a bit ready for this if this happens to me, right? Or I resonate with you, Chris, and I did went through a similar thing, right? Or I am actually going through the same right now. I was just laid off, and I'm in this company trying to learn. And maybe your talk brings a bit more clarity into, you know, how I feel and how can I maybe manage some of those feelings, I guess, going forward. So hopefully, you know, technical knowledge, but also understand a bit more about the emotions of these things and how to move forward after some of these happen, right? If I look at the statistics, probably a good amount of people from the audience who have been affected by this, right? So I think is definitely, you know, something I will be willing for them to, you know, to see how I manage, and also to take some learning from that. Yeah.
Great. Well, Chris, thanks so much for doing this. I'm really excited to see this talk. I know it's not an easy thing to get up there and talk about, but I can't wait to see kind of how it lands with the audience as well. I will see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward as well.